Hi guys, it's Kamil here, and I'm coming to you with the first book.
Nothing's gonna change my love for you. You wanna know my now?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. A novel published in 1962 and turned into even more successful movie in 1975, directed by Milos Forman. If you lived under the rock and you haven't read the book or watched the movie, in just a few words let me cover the basis of the plot. So One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is narrated by Chief Bromden, a Native American patient of psychiatric hospital. Bromden narration focuses on Randall Patrick McMurphy, a guy that fakes insanity to avoid work from prison for gambling and battery. Not realizing really that being committed to a psychiatric hospital, his release from it is totally out of his hands and depends on the decision of a doctor that is hugely influenced by a powerful woman, Nurse Ratched, an epiphany of all evil. So first, I'd like to address briefly the main theme of the novel, then my impressions after reading it so many years later, and that will be followed by my current understanding of the book. So the main theme. The title of the novel refers to children rhythm that is recalled by Chief Bromden, thinking about his childhood games with his grandmother. And the rhythm goes, I memorized it, so yeah. Ting, tingle, tingle, tremble toes, she's a good fisherman. Catches hands, puts them in a pants. Rye, blye, limberlock, 3 geese in a flock, 1 flew east, 1 flew west, 1 flew over the cuckoo's nest. O-U-T spells out, goose swoops down and plucks you out. Yeah. The title as well as the novel itself is heavy with symbolism. So obviously the cuckoo's nest is the hospital and the one that flew over is McMurphy. The theme you'll notice very early on, or probably can deduct before even reading the book, just knowing a bit about it, plot, is the theme of individual struggle against the system. Individual men being McMurphy and the system being represented by sadistic Nurse Ratched. We have a very Kafkaesque situation here. Murphy is doomed from the very beginning. Whatever he will do, he is not able to win with the system. There's always a mental illness he can be accused of, right? While the narration itself is often interrupted by Chief Bromden nightmares that often put a reader in a situation where he is not sure how much of it is a reflection of patient's reality and how much a pure fantasy of a dream, right? Now to my reflections and the interpretations. I remember loving the book when I read it when I was probably before my 20s. And that was the period where I read books, but my reflections and interpretations were generally on a very basic level. You know, like introduction to interpretation classes one-on-one. And by saying that, I mean that I was pretty much buying what the author tried to sell. Obviously, if that was aligned with my beliefs. And here, system against individual, mechanized world against the one in connection with the nature. And I was most probably judging the books on that only and the readability factor. I mean, how can you not appreciate the book talking about one struggling against the system, one freedom against the system? You know, if your heart is in the right place, obviously. And now reading it, being 34, I can confirm the readability factor is here. So I picked it up on Friday evening and I finished it by Sunday afternoon. But the first question that popped in my head when I was, let's say, around 30 pages in was, wait a minute, why all the evil is represented by the women or black guys? There are very direct matriarchate related conversations or references in this book, and the fear of the powerful woman is present on almost every single page. So let me read you a thing. This is McMurphy's conversation with Harding, one of the patients. "Oh," Harding saying, "I believe my friend is catching on, fellow rabbits. Tell me, Mr. McMurphy, how does one go about showing a woman who's boss? I mean, other than laughing at her, how does he show her who's king of the mountain? A man like you should be able to tell us. You don't slap her around, do you? No, then she calls the law. You don't lose your temper and shout at her. She'll win by trying to placate her big old angry boy. Is this little man getting fuzzy, oh?" So you see, my friend, it is somewhat as you stated. Man has but one truly effective weapon against the juggernaut of modern matriarchy. But it certainly is not laughter. One weapon, and with every passing year in this hip, motivationally research society, more and more people are discovering how to render that weapon useless and conquer those who have been the conquerors. And do you think, for all your acclaimed psychopathic powers, that you could effectively use your weapon against our champion? Do you think you could use it against Miss Wretched, McMurphy, ever? McMurphy: "Why, if you mean, do I think I could get a bone up over that old buzzard? No, I don't believe I could." I mean, you hear that those guys are directly saying that after beating your woman was penalized, the only way you can tame a woman is to shag her. Coming back to the matriarchate, Nurse Wretched represents the evil of the matriarchate, but she is not the only one. So Chief Bromden's mother is portrayed as a huge, overshadowing woman that after she was done with his father, the chief's father, he was changed from a proud, resisting the system man into basically castrated alcoholic. The fact that he took on his wife's name after the marriage because she was a white woman and he had only Indian name is also very telling. Most of the characters in the novel, in fact, were damaged by relations with women. So Harding, the one that was talking in this quote, was psychologically castrated by his wife that constantly still makes jokes of him, insinuating that he is either impotent or homosexual. Then there is Billy Babbitt, that was never allowed to grow up because of the odd relation he had with his mother that was a friend of Sister Wretched. So basically, we might say that the role of the woman in this novel is diminished to being either a ball cutter or a whore. And I don't think I will be wrong saying that the masculine qualities represent the good, freedom, while the female ones represent repression. You know, it's through Chief Bromden's mother that the government gains rights to Indians' land. Obviously, his father needed to give the consent, but she was the power behind it. So I was wondering why Kesey decided to use this pretty obvious, unless you are 19 with limited abilities to comprehend, as I was. So I was wondering why Kesey decided to use this pretty obvious, simplified and very sexist methodology to show the polarization between repression and freedom. And I believe it must have been his quite shameful, obviously, response to the change in gender roles. You know, the 50s is the time when those roles are still pretty conservative. And the gender dynamic is conservative. A woman's role is basically at home, but then there is an eruption in the neighborhood. Civil rights movement and the second wave of feminism enters the stage. And we have 60s with a very different gender social dynamics. So this book is a demonization of powerful women and basically promotes sexism and misogyny. Nurse Ratched is exposed, physically exposed, during her, let's say, last but one battle with McMurphy. So she is powerful because she is asexual. And until he rips her clothes off and shows her breasts, obviously being a symbol of female sexuality, she is untamed. By exposing her female qualities, sexual traits, he seems to be aiming at bringing balance, right? You know, when you cannot beat the shit out of a woman anymore, at least you should be able to shock her. There's one woman here that doesn't really fit the picture, and it's a nurse in the disturbed ward. She is balanced, neither a whore nor a ball cutter, friendly, empathic, caring, but her character is so episodic that I do not really know what to think of her. So yes, all in all, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a very caricaturist and extremely sexist. Nonetheless, a page turner that is a good portrait of not the one to be proud of, but probably historically accurate portrait of a man at the beginning of the 60s. The one that with fear looks around thinking of, what the heck is going on? All those nasty women running around? This is an absolute, total disaster. Okay guys, this is it. Let me know what you think of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I guess all of you read it, or most of you, so please let me know your thoughts below. And yeah, the next book that I will pick up within this project will be Crime and Punishment in August. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.